Well, hello everyone, I'm Justin Bell and welcome to Drive To Win. As you know, we are now on Sirius XM, ESPN Extra, Channel 81, and of course also on demand on the Sirius XM app. Well, I'm here inside the Wynn Las Vegas, as always in this beautiful SXM studio, and the show is brought to you by Mobil 1 for the love of driving. Well, there's a lot to unpack this week, and our guest is the one and only Spin to Win, Danny Sullivan. He's been on the show before, former F1 official steward, and a guy that keeps in touch with the sport. So I'm looking forward to diving into the race with him. But let's start. I mean, normally coming out of a sprint weekend, the first one of the year in Shanghai, China, I wouldn't really talk about the sprint race because, I mean, it's not that it's inconsequential, but it doesn't really have much effect on our show. But this week, with Ferrari winning, Lewis Hamilton having pole and then taking the win, I'm such a fan that I have to bring it up. I mean, he was, resplendent, all in red. I don't think the words Lewis Hamilton leads from Max Verstappen in a Ferrari, well, they're words that have never been said before, and I particularly enjoyed hearing them. My observations really on our seven-time world champion, Lewis Hamilton, taking that win. You saw it at the start. After qualifying, he's like there getting interviewed going, yeah, I guess I got pole. I'm not sure how it happened. Very bewildered. I think that bewilderment probably turned into intense focus on winning the race. And the sprint start was very decisive. It's the way you have to deal with a Max Verstappen. He's not going to mess around and think there's any weakness in the racecraft coming from Lewis. And Max, the way he was just cut off by Lewis to dominate into the first turn, that's how you have to deal with him. You cannot be wishy-washy like we have seen someone called Lando Norris be in the past, although he rectified that in the main race. But it was how you do it. And that basically, I think that performance in the sprint race probably silenced a few of the Lewis Hamilton critics, which were, he's too old. He's never going to do it. Why is he going to Ferrari? It's just for the money. No, I think it is for the money and for the ability to build his legacy. I mean, he certainly held his lead. It was great pace throughout the race. I mean, he's won over 100 races, so he knows how this dance goes, and tire management was incredible. They were really learning all the way through, and those are the lessons. The tire degradation in the dirty air is so difficult, and Lewis managed it very well. Now, of course, Oscar Piastri, having passed Max, a great pass, I'm sure he thought, I'm going to go after the old man now. Well, that didn't work out quite as he had hoped, because the old man just crushed him. And I, for one, as an older man, was very pleased about that. So he wins. Lewis Hamilton wins his first race for Ferrari, the first driver over 40 years old to do so in a Grand Prix since Nigel Mansell. That's pretty impressive. Okay, well, I got the sprint out of the way. We know it didn't go that way in the main race for Lewis Hamilton, unfortunately, in Ferrari. Both he and Charles Leclerc getting disqualified. Whew, I bet that was the ups and downs of being in Formula One. Although I do want to bring up, did you hear that Lewis, obviously exuberantly happy, sent this massive care package delivery of pineapple pizzas to everybody at Maranello, and Italians and pineapple pizzas, well, it just doesn't go. And I think there was a little blowback for him in the Italian media about that, but it was well-intentioned. I don't blame him. I think we're seeing that Formula One at the moment is really it's an exercise in the mental game, and it really starts with qualifying. And there's a reason I'm bringing this up. In sports, we always see it, don't we? It's if you don't deliver in any way, the rumors start. If you don't deliver to the promise of coming into a sport, into an opportunity, especially in Formula One, think about it. There's 20 seats. I don't know how many positions there are on a basketball team in the NBA across the whole series or the NFL, but certainly it isn't 20. And that means every single seat is coveted, and most hard, it takes extraordinary excellence just to even get there. But now the spotlight, of course, that's who I'm talking about, is on Liam Lawson. And I feel for the guy. He had some great results last year. He certainly showed he's a feisty fella and deserves the seat, but the rumors are there. He's had basically two 19th place finishes, and like everything in life, a bad rumor takes twice as long. I think they say 9 times long. It travels 9 times faster, a negative rumor, than a positive thing. And right now, that is what is happening. So what's going on, guys? I really don't know. I think it's a couple of issues. Red Bull is a notoriously tough environment for a young driver. Their Red Bull ladder is exceptional. It's an opportunity where Red Bull, Liam's been with them since 2019. But when you come through that ladder, at the top, you have this one pivotal, iconic figure in Max Verstappen. And I don't think their ladder maybe was always this way, but when you have someone who is ruthless in execution, unwavering in mental focus, and his upbringing with his father Jos being pretty much the archetypal tyrant as a go-karting father, and also someone that knew how to win races himself in a variety of sports and sports cars and Formula One. He's a guy that knows how to do it. So he was super hard on Max. I think that created this energy and philosophy inside the Red Bull racing ladder. And when you look at Liam Lawson, I'll just read a couple of things here. I mean, he made his debut at the 2023 Dutch Grand Prix. He replaced Daniel Ricciardo at AlphaTauri for 5 Grand Prix. He scored his maiden points finish in Singapore, and then went full bore, obviously, to replace Daniel in 2024 from the US Grand Prix onwards. He's one of the up-and-coming youngsters. So I think he's just crushed under the pressure because he can't drive Max's car. I'm looking forward to talking about this with Danny when he comes on. But that second place in the Red Bull has a legacy of crushing drivers. Gasly, Albon, even Perez. Perez is looking as though he didn't do that bad a job now compared to Liam. But when you watch behind the wheel, and DC brought it up on F1 TV app, when I was watching, he's saying, look how tentative he is. He's not really carrying a lot of corner speed compared to where he should be. Just felt that the car was flat. The energy wasn't there. I think he's just scared of making a mistake. He's not being allowed to, in his own mind, approach it in a way to unleash himself. And he absolutely has to get a handle on it. And, remember, Schumacher also set up a car that no one else could drive. And they tried, but it's very difficult. All sorts of rumors, of course, that right now, and I do want to preface this by saying, we're taping this at the beginning of the week, the day after the Chinese Grand Prix. It will air in the middle of this week. So by the time I even get home tonight, it's probably changed and we'll know what's happening. Red Bull are calling an emergency meeting in Milton Keynes to discuss not just the car's performance, where they are, because Max is the only one making it look good, and what they're going to do with Liam. Are they going to replace Liam with Yuki Tsunoda going into the Japanese Grand Prix? Now that would be some sort of chaos, because if you were Yuki, you'd absolutely take the opportunity, wouldn't you? How could you not? It's what you've been pushing for. But it's a poison chalice, because in front of your home crowd, whereas in the Racing Bulls, you might finish in the top 6, top 8, top 10. You might be at the back of the field in the number 1 team on the grid, arguably. So I think that's the leading story right now. We'll find out more. And I do want to also mention that we've seen Helmut Marko is not the fuzzy, warm-hearted grandfather that he might look like with his gray hair and nice face. He is ruthless the way he manages these guys. Just look what he said about Hadjar last week. I mean, why is the kid crying? That's pathetic. I don't think you can expect an arm around your shoulder from him unless you are Max Verstappen. So Red Bull Racing. Warm, looks cool, fun, frantic. Red Bull energy drink, high energy, but it is not that way when you're racing for them. So, yeah, Red Bull gives you wings, right? But it can also burn them off you. So the big thing for me was going into the race, Piastri getting his first Formula One pole. It was a cracking lap. I love the end of qualifying. It was his first in Formula One, and I think it really set the scene for an amazing race. So let's bring on Danny Sullivan. Remember, he earned 17 wins in the IndyCar World Series, including winning the 1985 Indianapolis 500. He won the 1988 kart championship and placed 3rd in the points in 1986. He was in Formula One with Tyrrell, scoring 2 championship points all the way back in 1983. And of course, Danny was a long-time Formula One steward, so he has his finger on the pulse. Danny, welcome back to the show. You look
Life's good.
You look good. You don't seem
good.
to age. I think it's a drug or something you and my dad and all your generation seem to have taken back in the day. Maybe it was just being scared witless the whole time. Is that it? I don't know. You look good.
That could be it. I'm not quite as old as your dad, but I'm closing in on him. I just had my 75th birthday last week.
Wow, man. I think that's crazy. I think the reason you look young as well, your generation, is you didn't have to deal with the bullshit of social media. So actually your life could continue without that level of weird scrutiny. I think that's part of it.
And I think that's a big factor for sure. It's a weird time these days, with everything going on.
It is.
But all good. I'm glad to be. And can you imagine, though, your dad and I were both pretty good with media and getting our image out there and, connecting with the press and talking to the press. Can you imagine what it would have been like if we had social media back then?
No, I think you would have been so well received and half of your behavior would have had to stop. That's all I'm saying.
At least half. At least half. Yeah, thank God we didn't have it back then.
Yeah, that's sure. What Jackie said to Dad at Le Mans a couple of years ago. Derek, it is lucky we had no social media when we were driving, So true. Hey, listen, you just said to me about how many years since your spin to win? 40?
40
what?
Years. 1985. Think about it. 40 years.
That's wild. So, I mean, for you reflecting back on that, can you even believe that the passage of time and you're still here talking about it and enjoying racing?
No, not it. I mean, it seems a long time ago, but it doesn't seem 40 years ago. Not for sure. Not 40 years ago.
Well, also it's 50 years since Dad's first Le Mans win this year and 30 years since our McLaren podium in the F1. 30 years for me, man. That's...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same bucket as you.
Let's talk about some young...
Let's talk about young guys.
Going on.
That's what we need to...
Yeah.
So, late night here for us. I mean, I watched it the next morning on the F1 TV app. What a weekend, man. Can we just start with what you thought about the sprint and Lewis, and did it bring you joy? It brought me joy.
I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was great. I mean, for me, one of the things that was the most important, he proved he still has it.
Yeah.
Okay. Won a race. Okay. And he had Max right there on the front row with him. Okay. And as we saw, their car, and this is the part I don't understand. He qualifies on the pole with the car on Friday, wins the race on Sunday, whatever time later, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is, after the sprint, right? He goes out there and they're six.
I don't get it.
What changed so drastically that everybody else jumped up? Now, I know Lando said, okay, they made some changes and they got it run for that. I get that. One or two cars, I get that. But that was a big change.
Yeah.
That was a big change. I don't know how these cars must be, and I know I've driven cars in the day, and I'm sure you have as well, that are on nice edge.
Yeah.
Right there. But boy, they must either really get it right or really go off.
Yeah.
And that brings up another question. Okay. How did Liam Lawson fall off so far when everybody, I mean, you remember when he did, because they just did it on Drive to Survive not that long ago, when he did that test and Max flew in to do the test, he was only 0.2 of a second slower than Max around Silverstone.
I know, and they were jumping up for joy. I mean, you brought up two big issues there. Let's deal with the first one. The Ferrari one, for me, with Lewis, Dad said the same thing. I called him on my drive out here last night, and he's like, I know you're a big fan of Lewis, but they must have set his car up super low on fuel and everything for the sprint. I said, Dad, they all did. That wasn't just him. Fuel is the one thing you're going to get right for 19 laps. But did they accommodate Lewis's driving style, which is a little more fluid, a little more smooth. The car's not on the nose as much as Verstappen and Norris and Oscar and all those guys have to drive it now. And yet it doesn't explain his qualifying speed, which is what you're talking about. I thought the car really came to him during the race, and I think the others were like, okay, we need to change our setup for the big show, but it still doesn't explain the qualifying, as you say. So, and he looked totally flabbergasted he had pole, right? I mean, he's like, yeah, thanks, I got pole. I have no clue. I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, there was a radio message too during that time from Leclerc. Do you hear that? After the race, he said, I want my car back.
Oh.
Nobody ever commented on that or picked up on that again. So, you know how sometimes if they're a little bit off, remember Daniel Ricciardo, they gave him a different car, or they built him a different car because he said something's wrong with the car. So I don't know whether they swapped. I don't know what that meant. I'm not trying to read into it, but did they swap chassis with Lewis? But then, okay, if that's the case, okay, then what happened on Sunday?
Yeah.
Or
was he talking about, or was he being more philosophical? I want my car back, as in you set it up this week and you screwed it up.
Yeah.
Do I want my car back? I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But they never brought that. They never brought it back up. So I think you're probably more accurate than I am, because I think if there had been a chassis change, somebody would have, because that obviously goes down in the FIA books and, on all the documents and the scrutineering and everything. So I think it must be more philosophical on that. But here's a point you just raised, something, a number of people, okay, this is a good analogy. You mentioned something. I think Alonso likes the car on the nose a lot too. Okay. But is that what happened to Checo? Is that what happened to Liam Lawson? I mean, to be honest with you, Liam Lawson's been a disaster.
Yeah.
The first two races.
Yeah.
And this guy's oozing with confidence, and he just, he's nowhere.
He's nowhere, which
they're
makes...
already...
I'm sorry to
is
interrupt.
it come back to these cars? No, that's good. Do it anytime. But does that mean it's the car is so set up and so built around Max that he's the only one that can drive that car?
I'm going to say this.
To Checo?
Yeah, my producer Jeremiah said earlier, he reminded me, do you remember, did you see that album interview that was broadcast recently on Instagram? They pushed it. He's sitting there very relaxed, and I'd love to chat to the guy. He's a guy I'd like to get to know. I think he's a cool guy. Albon, fast, smooth, easygoing. But he was saying...
Funny guy.
And he was saying, when you look at Max's car, the way he sets it up, he said, my analogy is that, when you set on your computer your mouse sensitivity to maximum, the minute you move it a little bit, the freaking mouse darts all over the page. It's impossible to control. He said, that's Max's car. And that's how Red Bull set it up. And he also, which I really respected, is he sat back and went, and that guy's so good, he can handle it. I mean, it was a real reflection. He kind of had this look in his eyes, like wistful. The guy's so good. I think the nub of this whole problem is he sets the car up because he can drive it that way. And if you were a Christian and the engineers and everything, wouldn't you run with that, Danny? Because listen, you've got to, if I'm trying to use another analogy, someone else in sport, if Tom Brady says he wants to make that play because he can win the Super Bowl, who's going to argue with him?
Yeah, no, I think it's and by the way, you got a guy that's 4-time world champion. You're going to always favor what he likes in a car, what his setup is. Even I can even remember back in the day when I was a gopher at Tyrrell, Jackie Stewart, Francois Sever told me it took him a long time to be able to drive the car the way Jackie drove it. You remember when Chris Amon, you weren't probably around, but Chris Amon stepped in. Remember they used to do a third car at Canada and the U.S. Grand Prix, right? And Chris Amon, who's, he didn't win a Grand Prix, but he was one of the most talented guys out there, said, I can't drive this car.
Really? Yeah.
So, and I think when you have a driver of Lewis's, Max, Jackie, different people through the era, you kind of go, well, he likes this. He likes that feeling. That's where we're going to kind of take the car
Yeah.
and design it. But here comes back the same question. Okay. Checo won some races with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he won some races in the season where he then just dropped off. So what happened there? What happened there? Be a great question. Be a great question for Adrian Newey.
Yeah, I would love to ask him. I would love to ask him because they, to us in the media, go, "Oh, we don't know what happened. We're still investigating." They have whatever 100,000 different data points coming off that car, 10,000. I don't know, more than you had a rev counter and a pit board. You know, they have more data than the shuttle, and it's like SpaceX up there. So they know, right? When they overlay the trace, it's not just throttle and brake. It's, where his nuts are in the car at any one moment. You know what I mean? They know exactly what's going on.
I can tell you there's a thing in the paper or in Autosport. Christian Horner said we're going to now analyze all the data. We have 400 data points and 600 engineers, or vice versa. I couldn't remember. I can't remember which one. But that just goes how much information they'll have before they make a decision. And to be honest with you, I thought Liam Lawson would step up because he's got that, hey, I'm as good as anybody out here attitude.
And he's already got into a scrap with Alonso. He's already got into scraps with everybody. I thought last year, he had the cocky, arrogant attitude to pull it off.
Right. I did too. And I think, but he got in there and, by the way, this isn't the first or second time that this has happened with Red Bull. I mean, let's face it. Even Christian Horner admitted that they made some mistakes with Daniel before, which is why Daniel left, because they put so much effort into Max with good reason. The guy's sensational. Okay. He's phenomenal in a car, or certainly in their car. Let's face it, that's pretty spectacular. But all the people that have dropped off that have gone there, the numbers are pretty big.
Well, let's jump forward to the race and the start, because I was impressed with Lando taking second place so aggressively at the start around the outside. And I thought to myself, that's exactly what he needs to do. That is the spirit of Lando that we saw last week, because I swear last year he wouldn't have cut Max off like that. So I was really impressed when he did that. What did it do, Danny, at that moment to McLaren's strategy? Because two cars running at the front, then the strategists and the engineers can then come up with a totally more dominant game plan, can't they?
Well, I think so. In particular, is they gapped Max pretty fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They got out of the DRS zone. They got him there. Okay. Now we're running our own pace. Let's get the pace out there. Let's get a nice cushion. They want a pretty good cushion for the pit stops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So they can't get undercut. And with two cars running first and second, that becomes an issue because they can only use one pit crew. Okay. So it's not like Lando's got his and Oscar's got his. They all have, that's why the stacking and everything. So the gap became really important. And I think those cars must be fairly tricky, because you look at Lando in the sprint race, he didn't qualify particularly good, didn't run particularly good, better in the qualifying for the real race, and then boom, jumps up, does a great start, gets away. So clearly they got the car more in that window that he likes. Whether he would have, I mean, those two guys seem to be pretty on par with their speed. One will get a little better. We've seen, two races so far this year, but you see how Lando had a little bit more in Australia, and Oscar had a little bit more in China. So
yeah, I mean, it does open up a lot. Both on par, yet very different ways to end up with the same result. I mean, you can see there's such differences in their personality, and whereas Oscar, I mean, I'm going to say this, I think he's obviously brilliant. He's not exactly going to set the world on fire as Mr. Fun, but do they care? I mean, he wins the race and it's like, yeah, thanks guys. That was good. Meanwhile, everyone else like bursts out of the cockpit. I mean, it's cool, but I think seeing the two of them run away, my first thought was, what kind of a problem is Andrea Stella and Zach going to have with this, right? How are they going to manage this?
Oh boy, yeah. Can you just argument say what was it? Wasn't it Prost and Senna?
Prost and Senna, 2 years in a row. I mean, they hit each other. I mean, those guys.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't think Oscar would think 2 seconds about doing it either.
No. I think if there's a driver,
he's there to win.
If there's a driver that comes across like Kimi Räikkönen, like a Michael Schumacher, like an Ayrton Senna, and like a Max Verstappen, they do not care. They will do whatever it takes and just walk back to the motorhome and just, hats off, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, hey, that's what I'm paid to do. I'm here to race, and I think, as a former driver steward too, I don't know how you get it under control, whether you go to Christian, Dr. Marco or that, but I think that it got a little out of hand with Max the last couple of years, but particularly the whole thing down in Mexico with Lando and stuff like that. Max is brilliant, but he has no qualms to run somebody else off. But if it's to him, then he's not very happy about it. It's like, well, they didn't leave me any room. And it's kind of like, you mean kind of like you didn't at the last chicane? Sort of thing? But I think that when that people kind of came down on him, it was like, okay, look, you're phenomenal, but you can't just drive people off the track.
Yeah. They could take a little bit. They should take a little bit. Bo Barfield, who does IMSA. He's the chief steward there. Great guy. A guy that actually, in my opinion, could be, should be in Formula One as a steward, because he is, he's so good at what he does. Not steward as the chief guy, but he
race director.
But he has a philosophy with those drivers that I really like. They'll barge into him one week and they'll come to him and it'll go around in circles, but don't be running back in here next week when you hit him, or he hits you. He sort of says, if you lay a punch, I'm sorry, expect it back. Don't come in here and bitch about it the next week. And it sort of has helped that.
I like that. I think that's a good attitude. I mean, I think because look, I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of steward hammering. And one of the things that I'd like to make very clear on it, I did it for 14 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did 4 to 5, sometimes 6 times a year. Okay. I wouldn't pretend that I'm the most experienced or anything. I was not a chief steward. I was a driver. I never saw anybody biased with it externally. Okay. Nobody said, oh, well, unequivocally, this person's wrong, that person's wrong, whatever. We analyzed the data, we made the choices and everything. The part what I never liked, okay, and for Jos Verstappen, we weren't paid. So thank you very much. We weren't doing it for the money. Okay. I'm not sure they could pay me enough to do it. Okay. That's one. But we were also not allowed to talk to the press.
Okay.
And the one thing that happened with a lot of people, mainly the guy used to be at Haas Racing and stuff like that, they used to love to sell their case to the press, but they never walked in and appealed it. And when they did, in most cases, they lost. Okay. But they never wanted to come in. It was like, well, let's sell our whole defense to our situation to the press. And I think in those areas, they got to get a little bit of that back on track.
I agree.
Two things that happened that nobody, this was back in Charlie Whiting's day. He got all the drivers just view a couple of incidents in the race and make their decisions and what the penalty would do. And he also did it for the team principals. Okay. They were much more brutal than than the driver steward.
Oh, I
or the
bet they
racing
were.
steward.
I bet they were. That's
And
a
they were
funny
like,
exercise. That's a
yeah,
that's a
and
good exercise.
when you sit down and look at it from that perspective, you know, you've raced. We're all out there fired up, and the
Mhm.
heat's going, and you know, everything's happening. We think, oh, we did this and we did that. No, those guys have no idea until you see it on video, and then you sit on the other side of it.
Yeah. Well, Ruth Buskin said that. Ruth said it when she was sitting here on one of the shows. She goes, you know, I often the drivers come in and they debrief and they're yelling and screaming. And she says, okay, in 10 minutes, we'll have another chat. You know what I mean? When you actually just calm down. Well, listen, radio communications during the race, we saw some really interesting moments, right? You know, we
Yes.
saw obviously Albon out there saying, leave me alone. I've got it handled. I'm better than anyone right now, which was
Right.
a strong piece of communication. We saw, you know, Lewis is still dealing with how to communicate to his new engineer after 12 years with the same guy. Max gets testy
Yeah.
always with JP.
Yeah.
He always does. Radio communications, there's a lot going on, a lot being communicated to the car. Do you think it's a lot compared to your day? Too much? I mean, now they can talk in every part of the track.
I don't remember. I mean, Derek Walker and I and some of the others were pretty talkative on the radio at certain times. Okay.
Yeah.
You can pick your moment when you want to, you know, you don't want to get a guy to listen, you're driving, you know how busy you can be you're just getting to the corkscrew, for example, at Laguna Seca. Get a little bit of a busy time. You don't need somebody coming on. Hey, by the way, can you pick up the,
Yeah.
hey, quieten it down. But I think a lot of that is, especially in Lewis's, is him developing the relationship with whoever's on that radio with him.
Yeah.
And I thought Lewis is amazingly polite when he does it. And obviously, let's also not forget the famous Kimi Räikkönen at the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
When he told me alone, I know what I'm doing.
It's just brilliant. I mean, it's the way it goes, right? I mean, you're under stress, you're under pressure. Let's not even get into the swearing thing, because we could talk for 10 minutes about that. But I do want to jump back to Ferrari. Obviously, they got disqualified at the end, one being underweight, one wearing down the plank. Total technical misstep by the teams, really unfortunate. But it was outrageous that Leclerc was able to run so fast, faster than Lewis, with a left front wing that was dangling down like that, creating some sort of aero benefit in certain corners, I imagine. Wild that they didn't bring him in, and, you know, the FIA didn't force him to come in, but I guess it held on long enough. It was incredible. He got performance out of that.
Well, I don't know if you saw it, which I'm sure you did, when it was going down the front straightaway. The wing was, of course, pushing down even more. So, or the straightaways, I shouldn't just say front straightaway, because a couple long ones. So that, of course, reduces drag. And again, you know, I remember even at Highcroft Racing with Duncan, one of the guys, he had all his fancy little flip-ups and stuff like that. And I think David Brabham hit somebody at the start of the race at Sebring, and he was just as quick as he was when he qualified.
Yep.
You know, they just drove it. So whether it helps it or hurt it, it didn't hurt it enough to affect his pace. So obviously some places it was beneficial. It was beneficial to him. I think I mean, okay, I don't know what the point total is for a 5th and 6th place. I forget the point count, but somebody can do the math for us real quick on that. How many millions of dollars was that worth to save, you know, that much?
Well, at the end of the year, if they lose the Manufacturers' Championship, the Constructors' Championship, just saying, they have a great last 2/3 of the season, these points count a tremendous amount, which is, of course, why Red Bull are, you know, freaking out about Lawson's performance, because with 2 McLarens running strong, 2 Mercedes running strong, you cannot have a 1-horse pony, or what do you call it, 1-horse race, right? Because there's no way you can win the Constructors, and that brings so much money, like tens of millions of dollars, just for a couple of points.
Yeah, well, that's what happened with Checo last year.
Yeah, I know.
That's why they were so frustrated, because he was just not scoring. And even if it's a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th if you're doing that every week, you think about that 20, 30, 40 points toward the end of the year.
Yeah.
With 2 cars, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's remember the 2 Alpines last year finished like 3rd and 4th or something like that in one of the races. And somebody said it was like worth $40 million.
Yeah, changes their life, especially at the lower end. Hey, listen, so in the middle of the race, around lap 35, Norris is about 2.5 seconds behind Piastri. Obviously, they're both independently in their side of the garages working on how they can both win the race. But even 2.5 seconds behind, Norris said on the radio he didn't want to get any closer. He wanted Piastri to speed up because of the bad turbulent air. You at Indy even, could you run 2.5 seconds and feel the turbulence, Danny? I can't believe these cars create such a box behind them of turbulent air at 2.5 seconds, man. It seems inconceivable.
Well, I think it does affect you, maybe not 2.5 seconds. I don't know. I've heard Lando made that comment a couple times before in past years, and it's not his way of saying, hey, if he would go quicker, I could go quicker type of thing. Or if he can't go quicker, let's catch him and pass him. I'm not so sure that's a subtle way to do that.
Do you think it's just such chaos in that airflow? I mean, it must, if we could visualize
I think that adds to it.
It must just be an explosion of air going everywhere. And maybe the mechanical balance at that point helps them. Some cars are better. I mean, you're right. Alonso pulls off moves. Other guys pull off moves, but seems to turn to crap when they all follow each other later.
Well, and again, I don't know if they're working to get the car to be optimum in clear air.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And here comes another back at you on a question. Why are some cars, the McLaren's really good on tires? Okay. Even Max says currently the tires go away on his car. I think the Ferraris seem to fall off a little bit. We're just in 2 races. Okay.
Yeah.
The Mercedes seem to be pretty good on tires. So, I don't know, because I think that comes down to all their data and how they're setting up the car. And if it's that much on knife edge, then possibly that is the case of you tip it off a little bit of aerodynamic, and then you got big push, or you can't get close to the guy.
But what you just stated actually normally would mean you don't have a fast qualifying car to have a car that's good for the race. You don't have a car that can do 1 lap fast, that can evolve during the race. We've all set our cars up, haven't we, with less, a little more push. So then during the race it balances out. But McLaren seem to be very good. Well, let me jump to the end. Piastri won, obviously. I didn't realize this. I just read it this morning. It was his 28th successive point score in Formula One. It's the longest current streak. Now that is the way some of these drivers, like a Max, make their way to championships. Just that
absolutely
consistency under the radar. Winning isn't under the radar, but I wasn't aware of his constant point scoring quite so much. And that is what maketh a champion.
I'm with you. I wasn't, first of all, I agree with you. I wasn't aware of it either, but it makes a champion, but it also makes somebody that a team wants to hire because they're bringing home more points, and it all helps toward. And remember, championships are won at the end of the year. I mean, you gotta be consistent. You can't get too far behind at the beginning, because you really got to score toward the end of the year. Look at McLaren last year. Max jumped out to a beginning, strong start at the beginning, big points for them and Red Bull. Checo was in the game at that particular stage, right? And then Checo falls off. Max has some problems. Next thing you know, McLaren's on a streak, Ferrari's on a streak, everybody's on a streak, and they're catching them, and McLaren and then pass them.
Yeah,
Ferrari.
Yeah.
But because they were strong toward the end. I think they were good at the beginning, consistent, scored points, but then they were strong at the end.
Yeah. Well, I think
I didn't realize it about Oscar. I think that's impressive.
Really impressive. And I think we're in for just this incredible year. I really do. I think it's going to keep going. What is your take on the rookies? We have Antonelli, who I think he's living up to the promise. They haven't even unleashed
Yeah.
him yet. I reckon it's like, you know, when you see that guy in the park with the big dog and he's like holding onto the collar, or maybe a little dog like a terrier that's ready to go hump everyone's legs. I think they haven't let Antonelli off the leash yet, but he is doing exactly what Toto told him to, which is stay consistent, don't F up, and you can score points. I think he's proving his worth.
And one other thing that helped him was probably that crash at Monza in that first practice session. That's like, hey, let's back it down a hair.
Yeah.
You know, let's, like you just said, let's build it up, be consistent, and so forth. Like Behrman proved that he was once again, he's somebody for the future.
Yeah.
I thought he drove well in the race. You know, that I was glad to see Hadjar come back from.
So was I. He's obviously good, right, Danny?
Saying his name, but
he's obviously pretty good. That's why he's there. Yeah.
Yeah. And Marco doesn't make many mistakes on those choices like that for him to promote him. I was glad to see Jack Doohan have a better the last there. He's been showing pretty good. He was right there. He outqualified Gasly in one of the races. I can't remember which. He drove a pretty solid race. I don't think the car is very good. You know, and I think part of the problem when you get all those guys, if you're a rookie and not a very good car, that's even more difficult to show.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think it adds a lot of dynamics to what's going on because they're all on their learning curve. But I mean, the grid is the end result. There's races happening all the way up and throughout the field. Other than Lawson at the back, I think there's a lot going on. Even, I mean, it pains me to say it in a way, but Lance Stroll is having his best start to a season ever, and he's pulling off great moves. He's running good lap times. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I'm glad to see that he's, you know, he's had some strong results over the years. Remember back at Baku and then in Montreal and so forth. I think he's got this, you know, he's clearly got some talent. He's got the speed. We didn't get a car under him, but he's, you know, maybe he's got to get. I don't want to say he's not focused because I don't want to make a judgment call on any of that. But I think he needs to be pushing hard.
Yeah,
as all he's got. He's got one of the smartest guys that's ever driven a Formula One car as a teammate,
and the best engineer, and the best car designer ever to be in the paddock.
Yeah.
So
well,
listen, just a couple of fun little things. Well, not fun. The first one before I let you go. Obviously, Eddie Jordan left us last week. You know, one of the great personalities. I've read every obituary of, even from the BRDC, just because I wanted to get to know more about his past. My encounters with him were very few and far between, but always fun, always made you feel like he was a buddy of yours. Do you have a little quick Eddie Jordan's story to share?
Eddie and I had become pretty good friends when I was a steward. I didn't know him obviously in the day because I wasn't around when he had the team, but we knew each other. EJ, he and I played golf together from in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, England. Maria's special, the kids, the family. He was just EJ, drummer. I remember going out with him one night in Monaco. We're having some drinks. He gets all this group around. Next thing I know, I look around. He's not there. he just set it up.
He made the Irish goodbye. Isn't that what they say? The Irish is the Irish goodbye. You just leave.
But the energy level on that guy, but I tell you what was also, he was very astute, okay, in what was going on. Everything around there. Like, nah, that's not the real story, And Eddie always said he didn't know anything, but he always had the real story.
That's good.
But you know what showed you how classy he was? He was trying to do a couple of deals, pretty big deals that he and I talked about some like while he was sick. And I talked to him about a month before and I said, how's it going? He goes, it's okay. I'm not that great, but it's okay. And let's talk about what we were talking
Always a hustler, always on the move, right? Always a hustler.
Oh my God. The guy was a wheeler dealer, but he was behind Adrian's deal.
Yep.
He negotiated a great out. And I think he showed what with a lot of kind of balls and, backbone and desire you could do in Formula One.
Yeah, those days might be over now for other people coming in, but he was the last of that breed. A very serious question before I ask you another very serious question to say goodbye. You were certainly always surrounded by beautiful women. Racing's always had beautiful women. Very seriously, which of the drivers do you think has the most attractive girlfriend? I mean, because I've been running my own little poll at home, and Carlos Sainz's girlfriend.
I'm not going.
Come on, Danny. I know you. Dan, I mean, Carlos Sainz's girlfriend, I think, is important.
They all look pretty damn good to me. I might just think that, I kind of like being single and running with a whole group.
And listen, they're young, they're rich, they have a good time. No wonder they're carrying on the tradition.
But I tell you what's important though on all of that, in all those situations though, it's finding the one that really helps support you in your career, particularly at this particular stage.
Without distraction.
You need what they used to call a general's wife. Somebody's there when you need them, support you, because it's such a time-consuming, demanding sport. You're traveling all the time, and it's great to think, okay, I'm going here in a private jet, or I'm going here, or I'm doing this, or I'm staying in the best hotel, or I'm doing this. It's still a racetrack. It's still, you got to get the car to work better than everybody else. All the fancy and glamour and all that stuff that goes, all those guys that are sitting in the car want to win, try to make the car go fast. They're not there just because of the lifestyle. They're there because they're competitive and they want to win. You need somebody to support you on that.
Yes, true words. Okay, finally, predictions for Japan, 2 weeks' time.
Okay, wet or dry?
Oh, well, wet, chaos, dry. Let's go with dry just for the sake of it.
That's a tough one because we've got, I think you'd have a hard time to go against McLaren at this juncture. So far, they've proven in preseason testing, the first 2 races, very strong. Question to throw in there, who's in the second Red Bull seat in Japan?
I mean, that is $1 million question. It's not fair on Liam really after 2 disastrous races, but when it's $1 billion enterprise or $400 million, a team enterprise, how long do you give him?
Yeah. And here's the thing, do you throw Yuki in at Japan? With all that, if it's wet, all these guys seem to be really good in the wet. And I think it comes down to the McLaren car right now, before the next 2 weeks. The McLaren car and Lando and Oscar are going to be really hard to go against.
Yeah. I
think Ferrari's a little bit off. They can get it right, but they're a little bit off. I think those guys got to have a little talk about some of the battling they're doing and moves they're doing on the first couple of laps to each other. George is obviously quick, and if that car's right there, what I love about this is that Formula One, it's not a slam dunk. Hey, it's just Max and Red Bull or Lewis and Mercedes, right? I think it's open, but I'd lean toward McLaren right now.
I agree, but we can be proved wrong anytime. And who knows? Charles
That's the fun of Formula One.
The fun of Formula One. Hey, Danny, thanks so much. Can't wait to see you. I hope we get to see you when you come down to Florida. Yeah. And maybe Indy. Maybe see you at Indy.
I'll be there this year. It's the 40th anniversary of Spin to Win 85.
I love it. I know. Take care, man.
Hope to see you guys. Thank you for having me on the show. Best to everybody.
All right, take care. Well, now the Formula One season is underway, it's time to start thinking about the 2025 Concours at Wynn Las Vegas. It is a weekend-long celebration that promises to be the social event of the fall season. prestigious cars and automakers will grace the greens of Wynn Golf Club for the 2025 Concours right here at the Wynn Las Vegas. It's the 4th annual gathering that will feature an expanded showcase of more than 250 unique cars within 4 judged and non-judged pillars for vehicle entry and display. The event will take place on October 31st through November 2nd. For more information regarding tickets and room packages, you can visit lasvegasconcours.com. Well, it certainly gets your mind going, doesn't it, when you talk to someone like Danny Sullivan. 40 years since he won the Indianapolis 500 and still in touch with Formula One and everything. So, always good. But as he was just talking and went off air, I was thinking a bit more about McLaren. I touched on it last week. I think that we're setting up for one of the classic rivalries of Formula One for the past 10 years. I say that because it's very unique in a Formula One team to actually achieve your driver lineup goals. We see it up and down the grid. How do you get 2 drivers who have the right level of talent that come into a team that are going to be symbiotic together? And by that, I mean, if you have 2 drivers with speed, there's different ways to make up a fast lap. And certainly with Oscar and Lando, you see the 2 very different ways they go about it. We don't hear much about how they set up the car, to be honest. There's not a lot of feedback coming out, whereas with Red Bull, we hear, oh, Max likes it one way. With all the teams, we sort of get an indication of how they like to set it up. Not with the McLaren. They stay quite closed lips on all that. But you can just see from their style of driving that there's something very, there is disparity between them. Oscar is such an immediate driver. He knows how to attack. He's instinctive. I think the way he shuts the door on Max right from his first race against him, he doesn't actually care. He doesn't care who he's out there on the grid with. He is not subject to any of the psychological whims and waves that maybe Lando is. Lando, we said it all through last year, and I was very complimentary last week on the show about how he seems to have cracked that. He's come back knowing what he needs to do. But when you look at the year ahead, it's all about which side of the garage gets that ever so subtle preference on who goes out first in practice, who's going to line up for qualifying first, who's going to pit first. I mean, all those things. And we saw it with the little team orders that came in last week in traffic, telling Oscar to hold back, him saying, I'm quicker. Those are going to become even more relevant, poignant, significant, however you want to say it, as it goes through. I think they know they're in 2 races. The race for superiority in priority in the team, and they're also where that leads them for the rest of the championship. And I think that is really very much what we're going to see. So Andrea Stella and Zach Brown are going to have their hands full. Oh, by the way, you might be wondering why Zach isn't on the show this week. He has actually changed his travel plans, but he's going to join us the Tuesday after the Indy 500 and Monaco. So quite a fun time to have him on the show. Well, Suzuka, Japan, one of the tracks that everybody likes to go for. Remember, has that iconic sweeping over crossover, and it first appeared on the Formula One calendar back in 1987. The weather can be treacherous. That's why Danny said, oh, what do you want? My prediction's in the wet or the dry. It is high speed. It has ultimate driving challenges, that snaking S-curves, has the Degner 2 commitments, very difficult, rewarding corner called the Danias, and that white knuckle rider, the 130R, all which kind of combines to make it one of the most demanding tracks. I love watching Formula One racing there. And of course, it has also been the venue for some of Formula One's most iconic clashes. I mean, in 89, Senna and Prost collided going into the final chicane. Senna went on to win the race, but Prost won the championship. And then in 1990, Senna and Prost had another collision, and they tried not to repeat it. Obviously, imagine team orders there, but they hit each other. And then Senna went on to be world champion. So, yin and yang then. And then there was an amazing moment in 1994 when Damon Hill won, and it was just hearing Murray Walker screaming. It was just amazing. So, I mean, Japan certainly has been one of those venues, and I know it's a 2-week break. The teams really need it to regroup. but it's going to be a great venue for a Formula One race. Obviously, a lot's going to happen over the next 2 weeks. I did give you that little disclaimer on what's happening with Liam Lawson and the Red Bull seat. We will find out over the next few days. Again, probably by the time we hit air. But there'll be some clarity on it. And that's really the main storyline going through. I think by the time we get to the Japanese Grand Prix, we're going to see a lot of work go in, obviously from Ferrari on strategy, Ferrari on how to get their cars fast. George Russell and Mercedes, in my opinion, they have it all absolutely wrapped up. They know what they're doing there. Wrapped up in terms of not necessarily winning races, but consistent points sneakily. Remember I said it, George Russell is right there. It seems uneventful at the moment. His pace is amazing. Toto Wolff even said, you are driving out your skin. I don't often give it a 10 out of 10, but you really have deserve a 10 out of 10 this weekend. I think we're going to see, up and down the grid, Haas, 2 cars in the top 10. Unbelievable. Are they going to be able to carry that on? More points than they scored the whole of last year. So many things to enjoy. I hope you enjoy the next 2 weeks with time off from Formula One. But of course, their social media machine, everything they do will be on full steam with all these storylines coming together. Thank you to Mobil One for the love of driving. Appreciate your support. Thank you to Danny Sullivan for coming on the show and lending your insight. I'd love to get him in here during the F1 week here in Vegas because he's such a good time and great to hear from. Of course, thank you to the Wynn Las Vegas for their continued support of the show. And remember, follow us on SiriusXM, ESPN Extra Channel 81. And if you're on the move, listen on demand on the SiriusXM app. I'm Justin Bell. I'll see you soon.